coming to our session. This is the early career R1 versus R2 versus R3 schools. What's the difference and what are the expectations of assistant professors at each? So hopefully you're in the right spot. My name's Lene Mudd. I am an assistant professor at Michigan State University. I'm going to be the moderator of this session. And I have three panelists, and really our goal here today is to give you a brief overview of expectations at different types of universities, and then open the floor up really to your questions. And so if you do have questions, I will ask you to come to the microphone to ask them. So that we can get all of that down. And we will do our best to provide answers, but we really want to give the information that you guys are looking for. And really, we started this session because I think as a grad student, we often are at research-intensive institutions, and then we get done with our PhD, and maybe we end up at a teaching-intensive institution. And the life of a professor at that school is very different from the life of a professor at a research institution. And so we wanted to give some information about that and what you can expect, and if you think you would like that or not. So I'm going to briefly introduce our three panelists, and then they're going to give an overview of the tenure and promotion expectations for a typical professor at their institution, and the expectations for research, teaching, and service, which are typically the three areas that assistant professors are evaluated on when looking to move up into an associate professor position. And then, like I said, the majority of the session is going to be based on your questions. So to my left, your right, first we have Dawn Coe. Dawn Coe is at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So she is at the R1 institution, or research intensive institution. Next to her, we have Becca Schlaff. Becca Schlaff is at the Saginaw State University, and so she is at the R3, or teaching intensive institution. And then Megan Holmes is at the end, and Megan is at Mississippi State University, or we call it the MSU of the South. And so she's at the R2, which represents kind of a blend between research and teaching. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Dawn start with her overview.
Okay, I'm currently an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I'm in the Department of Kinesiology, Recreation, and Sports Studies. And I am actually going up for tenure this fall, so this is very appropriate for me. And going through that process right now, I'm very familiar with the tenure and promotion requirements, and I was made aware of those requirements when or expectations when I took the job. So those of you who are looking for jobs or getting ready to go through that process, when you interview at different institutions, it's important that you ask about their expectations to know what you're getting into when you start that position. In terms of research, so research is kind of the big one at UT. There's also really strong emphasis on teaching, and I'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of research, it is expected that you publish between 2 and 3 papers per year. So they kind of want you on the higher end of that scale. So they want you to be submitting papers, getting papers published in print on a regular basis in your field of research. So they want you to make an impact in terms of your research and what it does with your field. We are also expected to apply for research grants. So at UT, we don't have the grant expectation that some other R1 institutions have. So we are expected to apply for grants. So the past 2 years, I've applied for NIH funding, which is what is expected of me. And then once you get funded, then they call you as meets or exceeds expectations, and then you're eligible for merit pay. There's a lot of support at my university for research. So the college, the department, the university gives us money, they allow us different spaces and resources, and our Office of Research offers a lot of help in terms of grant writing and submitting your grants. In terms of teaching, we're expected to teach 2-2 load, so we have 2 classes per semester that we teach. One of the big expectations is teach well, so good scores on student evaluations. We also have peer evaluations, so we're expected to have at least 2 peer evaluations of our teaching before we go up for tenure. And then we are expected to successfully produce master's and doctoral students, so mentor those students through the process. That's all included in our teaching load. At UT, the service component, they tend to protect us from service. So we are not allowed to serve on college or university committees while we are considered junior faculty. Once you submit your papers for tenure and promotion, then they allow you to start being on different college and university committees. Personally, I've been on some department committees, and then I've done a lot of committee and service work with ACSM, so in my field, and as well as some in the community. But at UT, the service component is the least emphasis, and research and teaching are most strongly looked upon.
Okay, thank you, Don. Becca?
Hi, so as Lene said, I'm at Saginaw Valley State University in Saginaw, Michigan. I am finishing up my second year at SVSU, and so I'm not quite as familiar with all of the pre-tenure paperwork that Don is talking about, but I have become quite familiar with the process at my university. So at SVSU, our process is completely internal. We can go up for tenure and promotion both after 5 years. And in terms of the teaching, the research, and the service, and how that is split up in terms of how you're evaluated for tenure, we look at 50% of what you do as teaching. And the other 50% can be split up kind of however you want to. Most people do 25% research and then 25% service. However, some people will do 30-20 in either direction. So in terms of the teaching expectations, I teach a 4-4 load, so 4 classes each semester. There's opportunities, and most people do teach in the spring semester as well. You're evaluated by a committee of 3 people, usually 1 person within your department and then 2 outside of your department in your first year, your second year, your 4th, and your 5th year. And so this committee is formed by our faculty association, our provost's office, and our dean's office. They appoint these people to evaluate you. They come in and they observe you teach over the course of the semester. They look at your research that you're doing. They look at your service and your overall portfolio, and write an evaluation report and score you on all of those things. And so it's nice because throughout my 5 years until I can go up for tenure, I'm getting continuous feedback from these committee members. Teaching is also evaluated based on student evaluations. So, I tried to get more straightforward answers about what exactly was a good teaching score, what they were looking for. I can't tell you, unfortunately. But, they say, good teaching when you see it, right? But student evaluations are important. So with the student evaluations and with the committee that's formed, they're essentially evaluating your teaching ability. The dean in your 4th year comes in, your pre-tenure year, and watches you teach several classes, and they write a report about your teaching. So we are more of a teaching-intensive university, and so naturally we focus very heavily on that. We're looking for innovation in teaching, not just walking into class, having an hour and 20-minute lecture. We're looking for student engagement. We're looking for innovative teaching styles. You won't survive, I can say pretty confidently, at a place like SVSU if you go into the classroom and approach it as a lecture every day. So that's important there. With the research, I can't really give you a specific number of publications that my university is looking for. I asked lots and lots of questions about this throughout the interview process and throughout my first year, and the university continuously will say that it's difficult to give a standard number of publications due to the fact that there are so many different colleges, so many different departments. They're going to judge art, right, different than they're going to judge somebody that's in exercise science. However, most people that are successful in going through the tenure process do tend to publish 1 or 2 articles over the course of those 5 years. At SVSU, an ACSM presentation here, a published abstract, can count as a form of a publication, which is different, I think, than what you would see at an R1 university. We have lots of opportunities for grant support within our own university. We have a great sponsored programs office that has lots of internal grant opportunities and programs for you to develop your own research. And so it is expected that you apply for one of these internal grants at least. Getting them is looked upon very highly. Applying for an external grant, again, looked upon very highly, but no specific expectation to, say, secure X number of grants before you go up for tenure. Research also is evaluated based on how you engage students in research. And so I've had the opportunity to mentor students through their own research projects to help them write their own grants. We have student grant mechanisms within our university. And so having the ability to do that and doing that successfully and bringing students to conferences and then presenting their work and submitting manuscripts, again, is also looked upon very highly. So then with the service component, unlike what Dawn described, we do serve on committees. Department committees, college committees, even university committees. I was appointed to the Institutional Review Board my first year. It wasn't something that I was pressured into. It was something that I saw as a good opportunity to learn about the research that other people on campus were doing. And I was protected, so I don't want to act like I was thrown under the bus or anything. But we do engage in a lot of service, both within our university and then also in the community. We work with different community foundations, and that kind of service is also, it counts towards your service requirement for tenure, which I really enjoy, being able to integrate that service component with like community-based participatory research. And so you can kind of fuse those things together at a place like SVSU. So then when all is said and done, when you go up for tenure, you are evaluated by an internal committee, and they're scoring your teaching, your research, and your service on a scale from 0 to 10. And then you have a cumulative average score, and that score moves on to our provost's office. He evaluates the evaluations of that committee, all of the committees that's evaluated you. Your department writes a report, your dean writes a report, and so all of that's taken into consideration for the tenure process.
Hi, Megan Holmes from Mississippi State. I am the Research 2 institution, and not surprisingly, expectations are somewhere in between these two descriptions for teaching, research, and service. Our teaching load is a 3-2 or a 2-3. Our third class, which semester that falls on, really depends on which semester we're teaching our graduate course. We're all expected to teach at least one graduate level course. We have master's level students, and we're starting a PhD program. We're expected to start in the fall of 15. So our teaching is the 3-2 load. As far as how that plays into our tenure, we're expected to get at least satisfactory ratings, is how it was described to me. We're looking for satisfactory to above satisfactory ratings. And engagement of students outside the classroom in different research activities as well that can tie over. With research, our annual average for publications should average about one per year, is what they'd like. And then also with grant writing, as you mentioned, we do actually have a number on ours. It's 1 before we go up for tenure. We're expected to apply for it, but there's no value placed on whether or not it's awarded. So you're expected to try to get one. With service, it's a little bit, I mean, I guess it's in between these two girls. The service, when I first began, which, by the way, I started as ABD, so I'm just finishing my second full year towards tenure. when I started, I was pretty well protected for that first year from service, but then I began being appointed to different committees, and it started at the department level, and then college level and university level have started to sprinkle in. We're also expected to advise, successfully mentor and advise graduate students, and that endeavor is expected to be productive in terms of publications and presentations. One thing that I noted that was different is our presentations, a published abstract, it counts as a presentation, but not as a publication for ours.
Okay, well, thank you. So hopefully that gives a good overview of what these different types of schools are looking for in terms of a successful assistant professor. And one thing to keep in mind is that schools will vary greatly with how specific they get with their evaluations. And so Appalachian State University, where I worked at previously, had a point system where you had to earn points. And if you got a certain number of points, you made it. And so you know, that was very cut and dry. Where I'm at now is much more qualitative. They're looking at quality, not points. And so they can't give me a specific number of publications I should be getting per year and those types of things. And so it's like Dawn was saying, it's something you definitely want to ask about when you are applying. And we're not saying that every R1 institution is going to be exactly like University of Tennessee. But that just gives you a representation of how Dawn spends her time as she's preparing for going up for tenure and promotion. So at this point, we would really like to focus on what your questions are. So hopefully some of you guys have questions, and please make your way to the microphone to ask those.
Lene, one thing I thought of, maybe class sizes between the different institutions.
Oh yeah, class sizes. So what are the class sizes like?
At Mississippi State, we average between 50 and 100 kids per class. And faculty, I would say, is spread a little bit thin. We had a very, very large increase in enrollment in kinesiology, and staffing didn't match. And so we're all stretched very thin with usually filling classrooms to fire code as much as we can, and doing the best. So.
Yeah, our average class size as a university is 21 students. Within our department, however, our classes are capped at 30, but we've been overloading to 35, like Megan's saying, fire capacity.
Yeah, the same. Our major classes, required classes like exercise, phys, and fitness testing and prescription, we're running between 90 and 100 students per semester right now, and then filling 2 sessions of each class in the summertime.
Yeah.
So it's getting to be a lot.
So maybe one thing to get us started while you guys are thinking of your own questions, and if you're too shy to come to the mic, that's okay, shout them out. But as they're starting to think about that, what was it that drew you guys to the position that you're in right now? Why did you want to be at that school and that type of school?
I can start. I originally started out at a teaching intensive university at Grand Valley State University, which is Becca's rival school. And so I really had loved teaching and enjoyed teaching, but I also wanted to do more research. And a 4-4 load is a lot, along with, I think I had about 120 advisees before I left. And I was serving on university committees, so it was a lot of work and not a lot of time for research. So I slept very little and tried to get research done so that when I applied to an R1 institution, I showed that I had some research record and publication record. And so when the opportunity at Tennessee came up, I applied, and now I think I have the perfect balance between I teach 2 classes per semester, grad and undergrad class, and then I have time to do research and focus on writing.
I actually am teaching at the place that I graduated from as an undergraduate. And to be honest with you, initially that was what drew me to applying to Saginaw Valley State University initially. I really was interested in being able to mentor undergraduate students. I was kind of a lost soul as an undergrad, didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had a really, really excellent mentor that if it had not been for him, I wouldn't have thought about pursuing a PhD. I wouldn't have thought about research. I wouldn't have thought about all the opportunities that I now have. And so, because of those experiences that I had as an undergraduate, I was very passionate about helping other undergraduates realize similar goals if they wanted to. And so that really was what drew me to the type of university that I'm at. I also really like teaching. I really like, I just really like mentoring and working with undergraduate students. I like to do research though too, so I don't want you guys to think, I think we get a stigma that it's a teaching intensive university, so I just go there and I just teach and then I leave and I go home. I have a great department and I am protected in a sense. My teaching schedule is set up so that I teach pretty much all day Tuesday and Thursday, and then I can work from home on Wednesday even. I have my office hours on Monday and another day, and those are my days where I write and I do my research, and we have great internal grant mechanisms and there is support. I think that was something that I didn't even understand necessarily, was that it's encouraged. So it's not just the teaching, the research was encouraged as well. It's just on a different scale. You have to kind of rethink what you're doing with it.
I think what drew me to Mississippi State was my fantastic experiences as a graduate student at Michigan State. And we had great mentorship as far as being exposed to teaching large classes as well as small ones, and applied practical lab-based classes as well as lecture-based. And so in that sense, I really enjoyed the teaching aspect of it, but I wasn't ready to give up my research yet, or sacrifice it too much. I still liked the idea of pursuing that, particularly in the South. I studied pediatric obesity, and having an opportunity to do research in the South is pretty fantastic. But then also, one factor about Mississippi State that was very instrumental is that their involvement in the exercises medicine program, the on-campus version of it, was one of the major things. So the fact that Mississippi State took a national position with a public health initiative was one of the things that was most amazing to me, and it was a service aspect.
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys are on 9 or 12-month contracts, and if there's the ability to supplement salary with external grant support between each different level.
I'm on a 9-month contract, and then we have opportunities for teaching and using grant money to pay for summer research or summer salaries.
I'm also on a 9-month contract. There isn't really an opportunity to supplement salary with grants. However, we can get release time from grants, which is helpful at times. And then any kind of spring or summer teaching is supplemental money if you choose to take that on.
Mine's pretty much the same. It's a 9-month contract. We do have the option to split it out for all 12 months, which is kind of nice. But then we have the option to supplement in the summer with summer teaching or buyout from grants.
Can you talk about your experience with research and teaching leading up to your first tenure track eligible position, your own individual experience, and what you know from your peers? What were the expectations?
During my doctoral program, I was really fortunate to teach lab classes, and I taught an exercise physiology class as the primary instructor. So I had a lot of great teaching experience. I had taught some, I think, activity classes too, but my mentor was great and secured those classes for me and allowed me to teach. And I also had a lab assistantship where I was helping manage the lab and run the lab essentially. So those were great opportunities. So when I started my first job in exercise physiology was one of my classes, I virtually had no prep. And we were always expected, even if our assistantship was teaching, to be involved with research. I mean, that expectation was given when we started, and we all graduated from the same program. So I think all 4 of us. So I think they'll probably echo what I say. It wasn't like people had to beg us to come in and get research experience. We were just there and did it. We helped our colleagues, we helped our classmates, and I can't even count how many research projects I worked on while I was at Michigan State, just to help and get different experiences. I mean, I worked on pregnancy studies, which was not why I went there, and then that led to me doing some work with pregnancy. So it gave me a different perspective on different people's research, master's level, PhD level, and just seeing what others were doing and getting experience so that I can go and say, I have these tools in my toolbox and I can help or, conduct a study using these assessments.
I mean, just to emphasize the expectation of, we had it on ourselves as well, as it was expected from our advisor, but as far as getting involved with whatever research needed to be done, because of the experience and what we could learn from it. That's one of the best things I think about our experiences is that we learn so much about so many different things, teaching and research.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add to that. I think, sometimes it's not easy to get experience teaching as a graduate student, but it's really important when you go on the job market that you can say, yeah, I've had the experience of writing an exam. That really sets you apart. Having been on search committees now, that's, at an R2 institution, that wasn't, something that we were looking for, especially among those quote unquote baby docs that weren't out yet, to see if they had some teaching experience, because oftentimes you're in research labs, and so you get a lot of the research, but that doesn't tell us if you're going to be effective in the classroom. And so some things that, you can do is if there's a community college in your area, I guarantee they're looking for instructors. And so you might want to, over a summer or over a semester, try to pick up one and have that experience under your belt, and that can help to make you more qualified for those schools that have a stronger teaching component.
Lene, maybe just to add to that, I did that my last semester. I taught at our community college, and one thing that is particularly fantastic about the community college setting is that they very much so protect your class sizes and your time, because it's an hourly job as opposed as a graduate student, as a faculty member, your salary, and so you spend the hours that it takes and you still get paid the same amount. Whereas at the community college, it's very, very protected, and so they keep the class sizes very small so that you don't go over on hours working on developing materials. And so it is a really great opportunity to get experience.
Hi, Amy Kirkham, University of British Columbia. So you've all mentioned that you have opportunities to do research. I'm just wondering if you could comment on what kind of support from your institution you have in terms of lab space, your ability to do equipment. If you were interested in doing more physiology-heavy study where you actually require equipment, as well as clinical research, being able to set up collaborations with clinicians, that sort of thing.
UT has been very supportive. When I moved there, they offered me a lab space, and then I had been working on some genetics and obesity and fitness, and so they sort of set me up with someone on our ag campus who was working in that area. So they were very supportive in terms of giving me space, and I had a good startup package, which really helped. My department has what they call support fund. So if there is equipment needed or anything needed by faculty to do research, the money comes out of there. Not a lot of places are like that, so I'm pretty lucky that we have that opportunity. They're also very supportive in terms of writing grants. So we have what they call a research support team. So there's someone who, helps find different funding sources. So they may look at foundations or NIH or federal funding. And then there's someone who is just a reader. Like, they just read through your grant and make sure it makes sense. And then there's someone who works on your budget. And then, there are all these, someone who just checks the NIH components and make sure you have all those components. So they've been very supportive since I've been there in terms of giving us opportunities to help hopefully be successful. One summer they actually paid me to take a research intensive grant writing class for NIH. So it was a 6-week class, so we went every day, and then they drove us to NIH, had us meet with program officers, gave us money for external reviewers to review our grant, and I think they feel like they're putting some money into us and hoping to get money out.
We don't necessarily have a startup package that, at least for myself at my own institution, that I was negotiating when I was interviewing. However, our department, as well as our dean's office, has that same, you call it a support fund, or
fund.
yeah, so a fund that's like almost like a slush fund,
Yep,
if you will. And they were very generous about asking me, what did I need? Do I need accelerometers, or what would be, a few pieces of equipment or things that would be helpful for me to get my research off the ground. And so there was an opportunity to request some things when I was hired. Our lab space is beautiful. It's state of the art. We have a wet lab. We have all of the equipment that you would need to do just about anything. We also have really good partnerships with the major health systems within within our community. And so there are opportunities there as well. We've started to talk with one of the major hospitals about an exercise as medicine kind of opportunity for our students and for their med students. And so there are a lot of opportunities related to that. Surprisingly, we have a really great support staff, the sponsored programs office that I had mentioned before, that does all the same things that Dawn just mentioned with regard to grant writing. They will seek out whatever grant you're looking for. They'll review your budget. They'll look at your grant and match it up to the guidelines. I was actually sent my first year to an NIH grant writing conference because they are encouraging more of that. There are more opportunities through NIH, the R15, for example, that's targeted at smaller schools. And so that is a goal of our university and of our college. And so there's a lot more support for grant writing and for research, I think, than I was expecting coming into the interview and coming into the role that I'm in.
So would you say your biggest obstacle to actually doing research is just the time?
Time, yeah. However, never underestimate the power of undergraduate students. I think coming from Michigan State and teaching there, and I mentored undergraduate students there as well, and that would be something that I would add to your question that I did, that reinforced that was what I wanted to do. We have some great students, and they're really interested in getting involved, and I would put up some of my best students against most master's students, and they might even be better in some cases. So it helps, but again, time I think is still the biggest thing.
I was offered I had a startup package that was pretty sizable for the College of Education at Mississippi State. But after that package, I had to spend that amount during the first year as traditional startup. And then I needed to spend it within a calendar year. And then past that, internal funding and grant support is there, but it's very competitive. So I guess one of our examples, and maybe just to piggyback on the idea of the undergraduate thing, our honors college has a program with a research program where the honors students get involved with research, and there's a research symposium, and are encouraged to publish their research or get involved with projects that can result in publication. And part of my service efforts is with our local or one of our high school track teams, and through that service effort we were able to design a research project that followed, and we needed a force platform. I don't know if you guys are biomechanists, but we had one and we needed two to really answer the question that we wanted to ask. And with that we were able to kind of pull money from different resources. So our honors college chipped in, and then our department chipped in, and then our college from the dean's office chipped in. And so if it's there, you sometimes have to get really creative, but you can make it work. There's pockets of money.
Yeah, so to add on to that, I guess, one thing as an assistant professor, wherever you are, to realize is if you want something, ask for it. And you know what? Your chair, your dean, your college, they want you to be successful. And so they will try to figure out how to make it happen. It might not happen right away. And it might be, you know, a little bit from here, and a little bit from there, and a little bit from here. And so then it's got to be used for labs and educational purposes along with your research. But they're going to try to make it happen. And I think a lot of times we can miss out on opportunities because we're too shy to ask. And so like my first year as an assistant professor at Michigan State University, I went to my dean and I was like terrified to do this. I thought I was asking for a lot. I was asking for $25,000 to support an ongoing research project that, you know, NIH hadn't funded it, but we needed to keep this birth cohort going so that I could apply for additional grants. And he sat down with me. 15 minutes later, he said, "Sure, I'll give you the 25 grand, just make sure you submit a grant off of it." Oh, all right. I mean, that was a drop in the bucket for his, you know, budget. And so while I was terrified to ask for it, it was no big deal to him. And I submitted a grant and it got scored well, so hopefully he's gonna get repaid by me getting the grant. And so that's just one example that your college and your chair are really invested in you, and they want you to be successful as much as you want to be successful.
So my name is Matt. I'm currently with the Army Research Laboratory, and I notice you guys are all at public institutions. So I'm kind of just curious, have you guys seen fluctuations in kind of internal funding for both efforts in kind of innovative teaching as well as research and that kind of stuff? Has it gone up and down with the budgetary issues?
We are not allowed to make photocopies except for exams in my department. So everything is on Blackboard. And we are told to, because teaching, when I was at Grand Valley, I had 25 kids in an ex-phys class. Now I have 100. And it's hard to be really, you know, interactive with the students without spending all this money on having them buy clickers or, so they just keep telling me to be creative. And I said, well, students don't really like when I lecture, you know, when you're lecturing most of the time. I try to do different things to break it up. And they just tell me to be creative, that the students are sort of the primary, they're the primary, like they want us to keep the students happy and accommodate them, but it gets a little bit difficult when resources. So the budget is really tight for, I know for us, has been really tight, and the state of Tennessee has really cut a lot of funding. My first 4 years, I think there were no raises, and then we got a raise 1 year, and then we're back to no raises again. So it's just, you just kind of have to deal with it and adjust, and most people adjust pretty well. If you don't, you probably don't belong, but just adjust to your environment, and most people can make it work.
I guess we're in a pretty good position because I haven't been yelled at for making photocopies, or they haven't said that the number of dollars that they have for internal grants or professional development support has decreased at all. So I'm lucky, but yeah.
We have some internal funds available. Most of them are competitive, though, so university-wide that we're competing for as far as innovative teaching stuff. One thing that kind of made me smile with the photocopy, we just had a faculty meeting where we decided that we would forgo having office phones, but then that money that we would be saving from office phones would go into our annual merit raise, which I've been very fortunate the 3 years that I've been there to receive one every year, which is pretty fantastic given the state of the economy and the fact that I am at a public institution in Mississippi. But it's interesting, you know, as necessity is there, you really do start to get more creative with how you spend your money and your time.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm a graduating master's student at UNC Chapel Hill, and I was just wondering, what are the differences or the pros and cons that you see between getting an EDD and a PhD at your different institutions? Because I'm noticing about a quarter of my professors have EDDs, and the rest of them have PhDs, yet they all seem to be doing the same thing. So if I could get just an idea of how that works at all three of your institutions.
Well, I think, so I've been on search committees where we've had applicants that are PhDs and EDDs, and as long as there is a fit for that applicant for that job, it doesn't matter. Because it really denotes, a terminal degree and, a dissertation and all of those things. It's really a matter of, does their training and background fit with the position that we're searching for? And so I think, in general, you see more PhDs than EDDs just as a function of where you graduate from. But it's more about the fit for the position. Does that answer your questions? Okay.
I would echo that. Yeah.
We had another question up front.
So, sorry if you guys talked about this in the first hour because I wasn't here, but is there opportunities for people from different disciplines, not PhDs, to obtain tenureship in teaching at large universities? And secondly, for physicians, I think I might already know the answer to this question, but do you realistically think there would be time to juggle a teaching job and private practice at the same time?
So to answer your first question about, I think you were asking, are there positions for like master's level trained to teach at larger institutions? Is that what you were asking?
Not quite. So I'm going to be graduating with a degree in chiropractic medicine, and so I was wondering, I guess, if that would be enough with the 4-year graduate degree, but just not a PhD.
So typically, you would probably be eligible for like an instructor position, where it would be a non-tenure track, and it's basically you're going to be hired to teach specific courses that we need your expertise in. But you're never going to have that opportunity to go up for tenure unless you have a PhD.
We do have a faculty member in our department, in our sport management department, who's a lawyer. So his JD is a terminal degree.
Right.
And
okay,
he was
yeah.
able to, but I don't know about, I mean,
So I'm not
I've heard
sure
of like,
about the chiropractic,
Yeah.
but
unless you had a PhD also, because there's like
Right.
MD PhDs and.
right.
So I'm not sure.
And then in terms of, so I don't want to step on anybody else.
I'd never really, I guess so I'm in the College of Health and Human Services, so other departments within my college are nursing, occupational therapy, social work. I know there are several occupational therapy faculty that have an OTD instead of a PhD, and they've been tenured.
But that's still a doctoral degree.
Yeah, you're right.
I guess
Chiropractic
it would
would be different.
I guess what the university deems as terminal.
Yeah.
So if it's terminal
that's-
in your area,
What you can always do is contact search committee chairs and say, this is my training, is this sufficient? And then your other question about balancing, clinical hours along with teaching, that's something you have to negotiate for in your contract and say, okay, this has to be part of my contract, and then it should be wrapped into what I'm evaluated upon for promotion. And that's how most clinician researchers do it.
I have just a quick question. I know we're running short on time. Could each of you briefly discuss, in relation to applying for grants at your institution, is it valued differently if you're applying for, say, ACSM grant versus NIH R01?
I think they want faculty at UT to support themselves to get research funding. It's more highly looked upon if you are applying for grants that have F&A, because then you have money coming back to the university. So that helps defray some of the costs of using the facilities. And our dean is really great about he usually gives a pretty nice percentage of the F&A back to the department.
Can you tell them what F&A means?
Facilities and
Something
else. Administration,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
So it's essentially, when you apply for a grant, you can apply for, depending on the mechanism, they will give you a certain percentage of the total you're asking for to use for facilities and administration. So, the way it was explained to me, it's like you using your university computer or the lights in your office or just that space. And so the university will, our university will use some of the money, and then the college will use some, and then our dean usually kicks back some to the department. And so our department chair has been really good about, helping, fund extra sections of a lab, and then whatever's left over giving to the faculty that secured that grant. So then the faculty can use that leftover money to buy any extra equipment or a new computer or something that they need. So they really like when you get the F&A, because the university does actually get some money back on it. But they're, we have a whole foundations area which doesn't give F&A, so they're still, asking us to apply at different places or supporting us applying different places. But I think when they have more money coming in, then that's going to be more highly looked upon.
Our system is set up in a way that I think initially you are encouraged actually to apply for a small internal grant just to get things going. It almost serves as your startup package because it allows you to get some pilot data to get the equipment that you need. However, you can only apply for 2 internal grants before you need to apply for an external grant. So there definitely is the expectation that you will apply for an external grant and not just continue to apply for internal monies and then never, try to go for something external. And just like Don said, if the university can get money back from a bigger grant, an NIH type grant, then that's going to be looked upon more favorably than just getting the small internal ones and little chunks of change from smaller external agencies.
I would say that it's very, very similar in terms of, obviously the grants that make money for the university or the institution are looked upon more favorably. I guess maybe the only thing that I would add as far as our requirements for promotion and tenure, there's really no difference. We simply have to apply for a grant. So it could be an internal grant or it could be, a nationally funded grant from NIH or NSF. And either of them hold the same weight as far as your productivity requirements for promotion and tenure. So.
Okay, so we have run out of time, unfortunately, but we definitely thank you for being here, and we're happy to stick around and continue to answer your questions if you have some and you'd like to come up and talk with us individually. Thanks for coming.